Working forests, as some of you may know, have not always been an easy fit in the environmental movement. It wasn't that long ago that harvesting trees was considered a bad activity, that working forests were considered some less than ultimate conservation outcome. Back in 1999, when we completed what remains today the largest forest conservation, multi-state forest conservation deal in the history of the United States. It was 300,000 acres in New York, New Hampshire, and Vermont. In fact, we were pilloried by the environmental community and by the foundations that supported them. They simply did not believe that working forests were an appropriate outcome for a conservation or environmental organization to pursue. Of course, we had a different view, and we put $86 million of our own money on the table to buy these lands. We managed them for some time and ultimately placed conservation easements on all 300,000 acres, and then recycled 2/3 of that land, 200,000 acres, back into the private sector, subject to very strong conservation easements. And it was then that the environmental community writ large across the country, I think, began to change its outlook, its perspective on sustainable forestry. Because not only were those lands permanently protected at a time when we were just beginning to lose vast acres of land, particularly across the northern tier of New England and New York, but the jobs, the communities that were dependent upon those forest lands remained as vital and vibrant entities. And the picture began to change. I think it has changed dramatically since then. Certification has played a very strong role. You all have played a strong role, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But clearly we have more work to do. Even in my own office, we have young people who come to work at the Conservation Fund, and one of the first things they request is that we go paperless. It's a common phrase, right? You know, we should save the environment, go paperless. Clearly they don't understand the direct connection between robust markets for forest products and the willingness and ability of landowners to keep forests as forests. You see, our inability to clearly articulate the importance of working forests and what it takes to maintain them, that's at the heart of our collective failure to align policies and practices toward ensuring that in this country our nation's working forests remain forests. Today, what I'd like to do is propose a new way of talking about forests that I hope will help to elevate forests to a much higher level of discourse when it comes to policy decisions, funding, and citizen support. We are winning battles here and there, but we are losing the war in this country, and we need a new narrative. And here it is. Forests as infrastructure. Forests as infrastructure. Not forests as wilderness. Not forests as parks, not forests as sanctuaries for wildlife, or forests for recreation, not even forests as fiber supply, but forests as infrastructure. Just like our rail lines, fiber optic cables, the interstate highway system, I suggest that forests are an essential part of our nation's infrastructure, and we should start investing in them accordingly. Our nation's working forests should be considered a distinct 51st state, a self-sustaining 400 million acre economy in green that provides us with clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, carbon sinks to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and a source of renewable energy, not to mention the more than 2 million jobs that depend on them. The city of Atlanta, over the last 30 years, has cut down and paved over almost all of the forests that provided its groundwater recharge, source of its drinking water. They didn't think twice about it until the drought of several years ago when they came within 90 days of running out of water. You don't think about running out of water in the East Coast. Atlanta came within 90 days of running out of water. Today, the city is buying up the very land that they cleared, paved over, and built subdivisions or shopping centers on. The city is buying up developed land, tearing out the pavement, and replanting forests at a cost of more than $500,000 an acre. They could have bought the forest in the first place for less than $500 an acre. Forests are infrastructure, and we need to start behaving that way. To our elected officials Here we are in the nation's capital. I say it's time to invest in our future, time to invest in those things that are essential if we are to remain a great nation: energy, education, transportation, technology, and yes, forests. Allowing our nation's working forests to be destroyed in the name of economic development is bad policy, bad economics, and bad planning. It is the ultimate disinvestment in America, and we deserve better. You see, before we can ask the American people to invest more in forests, we first need to convince them that those forests are and will be well managed. And that's where forest certification comes in. Certification provides a window to the public into the forest, and it provides them with independent assurance that certified forests are managed well. And certification is working. Certification has fundamentally changed the way forests are managed here in North America. SFI alone has certified nearly 200 million acres in North America, trained more than 130,000 loggers. It's a record of success that no other system can match. In addition, SFI requires its program participants to invest in sustainable forestry research. Research, critical to the forests of the future. Nearly $1.3 billion since 1996. SFI is the only certification system that requires investments in research. In my career, I've had the privilege of visiting with farmers, ranchers, forest landowners, hunters, fishers, and people who just like to walk in the woods. And I have listened to citizens in small towns and big cities, in red states and in blue. And while we have many differences, we share one thing in common in this country: a love for the land. The rancher on the Rocky Mountain front who wants to pass on the family operation to his children. The woodlot owner in Georgia who has nurtured her forest for a generation in order to send her daughter to college. The grandfather on the Chesapeake Bay who wants to take his daughter duck hunting for the first time, and the urban teacher in Los Angeles who, desperate for some respite from the stress of the city, just wants to take her class to a park down the street. These are the lands that have shaped us as a people and defined us as a country. They provide us with clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and support millions of jobs. They teach us who we are by preserving where we have been. They are not some kind of amenity, something that is nice to have. They are a necessity, something that we must have. They are infrastructure, and we should invest in them accordingly.